Thank you for joining today. We're going to look at how IT departments can create a self-help solution using chatbots, but this isn't really just about IT departments. This is basically anybody who's dealing with either internally or externally with employees or customers in ways that you may have to generate a ticket to resolve an issue or um, transfer information from an interaction to a database, anything of that nature. We're going to look at how chatbots can actually be that intake and reduce a ton of manual data entry, a lot of the workup to act if there is need for human intervention. A lot of that information can actually be gathered by a chatbot, by a chat experience, and then when it is time for that human to take over, they have a very good understanding of what exactly they're getting into, and they can help that customer or that internal user quickly. And we're actually going to go through the math of this, so it'll maybe be shocking to see the numbers behind what this actually can cost. Just standard IT operations using a ticketing system where they're often manually entering. And but to get started, what we're going to do is we're just going to look at the traditional IT framework and some traditional channels and tools that are used. And then from there, we're going to break down each of those pretty quickly and then move to ways that we could solve this problem. And then I've left quite a lot of time in this webinar to really get into some demos. So we're going to go look at a demo that we built for Montana State University's IT help desk. We're actually going to look at their current offering to try and find an answer for something. Then we'll go through the chatbot. And then I have a little extra treat, which is another chatbot that we're going to go through that collects a user's information, determines the topic of their submission, generates a ticket for them, and does some other cool stuff. And I'm just going to talk about these different ways that this chatbot works and the things it does behind the scenes, because I think that's really important to this topic, is what chatbots can do behind the scenes. Front end, the user has no idea it's happening. It's a really seamless, clean experience for them. Back end, lots of things are being automated, lots of time and money saved. So we'll jump into that. I'll even actually drop into the builder for just a few minutes and show how we can add live chat to that experience in minutes and have it up and running. So let's get started. First and foremost, introductions. My name's Levi. I'm a consultant with TARS, and my backstory, if this is your first time joining, is I built one of the largest public-facing chatbot systems in US government, and it did a lot of automating customer support, but it also created basically a giant help desk where this virtual assistant would take people through all the processes essentially that they would need from the DMV, the notorious DMV, and it would step them through those processes so that they would have a much better experience, but also be successful in what they were trying to do, because the website was very confusing, hard to understand, lots of conditions, lots of text, lots of different things that applied, and people had a hard time figuring out what applied to them. And the chatbot just simply used questions and what they were there. They drive the conversation to find the answers they're looking for and be stepped through in a seamless way. And actually what we're looking at today on the MSU side of things, Montana State University side of things, is similar. Much smaller use case, very to the point, but a similar concept, stepping somebody through processes based on their conditions and context. So who are we? TARS has been around for 5 years. We work on the private sector in conversational marketing. And then on the public sector, we work with government agencies to help them scale customer support and services. for their citizens and internal employees as well. So let's talk about traditional channels and systems for IT to resolve their user issues. So this is pretty straightforward, right? And if you did join me last week, you're going to notice a lot of these slides are actually pretty similar because there's a lot of similarities between customer support in general and then this topic today of IT support. The human-based systems, right? So we have phone. That's very common, especially with help desk IT. Most people just pick up that phone, they call, the help desk answers. There's definitely a lot of cons to this process. For one, every single time that happens, the IT professional on the other end of the line has to generate a ticket manually and have a conversation, right? So a lot of these conversations go 15, 30 minutes on average. And when you have a large volume, that you can't scale that. You also have live chat, probably not as used by IT, but it's definitely an option. And live chat works really well if you have a lot of information up front before going to that chat. Unfortunately, most IT departments don't have that luxury, so they're looking at live chat as being kind of a long process between chatting back and forth, right? And it's sucking time out of that IT professional's ability to do their jobs as tickets mount. Email, very traditional. You send your issues through email. They generate a ticket. They respond by email, sometimes calling you up, sometimes being able to resolve it over email. But again, it's a more of a low touch point, but there's a lot of manual entry that has to be done, a lot of context that's lost in emails, and it can be very hard to understand what the user actually needs and what is actually going on versus, say, a phone or a live chat. And then we have text-based systems, which is, straight up web pages. PDFs, this is very common in the public sector. PDFs, that's what they throw everything on. And there's a lot of issues with PDFs, especially from just a comprehension, and it's certainly not mobile friendly at all. So you're basically alienating at least 50% of your users by trying to stuff information into PDFs. And then knowledge bases. These have a lot of pros to them. You can basically put anything, any collection of articles up that cover a ton of your internal processes that these users can actually go through and solve their problems. The issue, though, again, is one, if they're on mobile, it's a whole lot of text. And when we're looking at text on mobile, it gets very overwhelming, very fast. If there's a lot of conditions behind that particular solution that they need to implement, they may be, most often people actually get lost in which condition applies to them. They miss exceptions, and any one of those is a callback to the IT help desk. So where you can add a lot of information and have a lot of screenshots and walkthroughs, there's still a lot of conditions that get lost in that. It works better for desktop for sure. Definitely has some cons with mobile. And then there's management systems. So this is a lot of what we're kind of talking about today, which is ticketing software. We're going to look at Zendesk specifically because it's a massive company and a lot of people use Zendesk, and it's a great example. But it's not just limited to Zendesk, right? Any of those ticketing softwares, as long as they have an API and they are able to be connected to, which pretty much every single thing in the internet nowadays has an API, then we can automate that whole upfront ticket process and shift that data to the ticketing software. So we're going to talk more about that. And then feedback collection. This is really important in numerous ways. One being when things aren't just flat out aren't working, right? Like software isn't working, websites having issues, whatever that may be. Having a way to seamlessly collect that feedback, to log issues or bugs, and do it in a way that doesn't actually require the IT professional to always be on the phone, looking at reading emails, live chatting to find out that this is a bug, can all be automated. So currently, these are some of the ways that IT professionals are intaking user issues and trying to solve those user issues before they have to have a touch point with them. But the problem is they spend nearly 3/4 of their time on repetitive, simple issues that account for the largest volume of tickets. So what we're really talking about here is these traditional channels and traditional ways of trying to solve user issues before they even come in aren't really working. Because if 3/4 of these issues are actually very simple, like how do I add email to my phone? Well, you don't really need an IT professional for that, but you may need somebody to guide you through it. And without a really good structure on that, say that knowledge base, or maybe and we're actually going to look at this with MSU. There's not just one um, user class or user segment. There's actually two or three, right? You have faculty, you have staff, and you have students, and they all have different ways that email is loaded to their devices. So once you get even enter that simple three different audiences into the equation, it gets very complicated to solve that through just static text knowledge bases websites. It's very difficult. People miss a lot of that and have issues. So what does this mean in terms of time and cost? So this is the most important, right? If we're really just here to discuss the bare bones metrics behind this problem, then we need to look at the numbers. So the time it takes on average is 70%. 70% of tickets are one-touch issues. That means it's back to that simple thing where that IT professional really only has to have a phone call with the user to solve, and it takes about 30 minutes on average. And this is from Zendesk. So these numbers are coming from Zendesk, and they're people using their ticketing software, and they're tracking these numbers, these metrics. So it's a very good understanding of where these tickets are and how long it takes to deal with them. The process of that, right, is the person often calls in. This is very common. So we have kind of like that call center help desk set up. They call in. The IT professional has to generate a ticket. That's manually, because they're going to have to listen to the user, figure out what their issue is, fill out the ticket software system, adding what priority it is, all these different small tidbits about the issue. They're going to, through that process, be doing a Q&A with the user, trying to understand exactly what they're looking for, what's going wrong. And then they're going to identify the problem through that Q&A, try to resolve the issue, and then document. If it's successful, they'll document that they've solved that issue, close the ticket, may add some notes as well to that experience. So we're looking at quite a good amount of activity that is required in even a simple ticket, one-touch issue. So the cost of that ticket can be anywhere between $20 and $500, and it could probably even scale beyond that depending on complexity. And what we're really, and just to say that, to move farther beyond that, right? That's not even considering the user's time, which a lot of these systems aren't tracking at all. They're looking at the time it takes the IT professional to generate the ticket, to solve the ticket, and what that means in terms of cost. Now, if we also include the user time, especially internally, what if that user is down for a whole day? That's a whole day of work gone. That's a much more expensive price tag than $20 to $500. It definitely could easily double that or more, depending on the severity of that person's role. Yeah, their tasks and what that could mean to the organization. So as I put, that's a lot of cheddar. Um, and most of those one-touch tickets are sitting somewhere between the $20 and $50 range, right? They're not taking too much time, but they're still costing. And the $500 tickets, we're not going to really focus on those today because those are those complex, multi-step, maybe multiple people involved on the IT side to fix. It could even require somebody to come physically on site to fix something, right? And that $500 going to go up for sure. It's going to be more than that for that ticket. And those still exist. Obviously, we need humans to be able to handle those complicated issues, and certainly to do hands-on diagnostics and fixing of equipment. But we certainly do not need IT professionals walking you through how to add an email every single time. So let's do the math. The average tickets per month, let's just say it's 500. This is a really good number that we can scale up depending on the organization. You may be dealing with 5,000 a month, but we're going to start with 500. Percentage of those one-touch tickets are 70%. And the average cost of those tickets are $20 to $50 on those one-touch tickets. So that equals $7,000 to $17,500 per month. Now, again, if we scale that 500 tickets up to 5,000, right, we're looking at a ton of money, $70,000, $175,000 per month on simple, easy to solve, repetitive tickets. So what the solution to that is self-help, right? Self-help solutions can eliminate all those one-touch tickets and that don't require intervention by an IT professional. Now, some of them may. So I'm not going to say that all 70% can be resolved because there may be an issue where the IT professional has to do something on the admin side to fix the issue. It's still simple, but they do have to do something. So it can't be completely automated. So what strategies could you implement to reduce these costs? Well, first, when you create a self-help solution, what it's actually doing is reducing the tickets up front. That means it's deflecting tickets from ever being generated in the first place. So if we can take that 70% and cut it down dramatically, and I would say down to like 20%, maybe even less, that don't even require the IT professional at all to touch it, which is a majority of these one-touch tickets, we have saved a ton of money right out of the gate, right? Cut it, say 3/4 of that percentage of tickets are gone. That's massive cost savings every single month, even if it's just 500 tickets. And if we scale it up, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars every single month saved by having a really effective self-help solution. Then if that particular user is either complex or it requires some touch point by an IT professional, we need to automate that ticketing, because the time they're spending, that 30-minute on average time, is spent, some of that is spent generating the ticket, working through this monotonous data entry they have to do every time somebody calls them, every time somebody emails, and it's, or even starts a live chat, right? They are spending a lot of time doing something they shouldn't have to do. So we're going to talk about how we can automate that ticketing process, and then open channels of communication. So once we have deflected all of those tickets, we've automated tickets that need the touch point of an IT professional, then we need to think about how do we take all of that context and simply hand it over to, say, live chat, where that user has been interacting with a chatbot. In this case, they weren't able to find their answer, but the chatbot knows what they're looking for. Now we can generate a ticket, we can set the priority level, we can understand very granular what they're trying to do, what device they're on. All of the information can absolutely just be collected through the user automating with chatting with a chatbot. And once that's done, then we have the chance to hand over to live chat, initiate a call to the IT help center, but they will have reference or generate an email report so that IT professional can actually start that email process or that phone call if needed. The point being, though, that the ticket's already generated and they have very good context as to what the user is actually, their problem is, the situation that surrounds that problem, their device, whatever it may be, the application, and they're able to then answer that touch point very quickly, or at the very least skip the intake help desk personnel and go straight to the person that actually knows how to fix the problem. Why should they have to contact this guy to contact his boss to solve the problem? We can jump all those steps because we know when it's a very complex issue that, Jan is the expert on. Let's send those issues to Jan. Now we've eliminated a bunch of steps in between, and Jan can answer that, and we could take even complex problems, which we're not going to focus on in this one, but we can take those complex $500 plus tickets and reduce them dramatically, maybe even cut them in half, because we've saved so much time that didn't need to be spent in the first place. So it's demo time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump out of this slide deck and we're going to go look at what it's like to try and find how to install email on my phone using Montana State University's website. Then I'm going to show you the solution we built for that, and then we're going to jump into another chatbot that shows the intake process. It's pretty simple, but there's a lot to discuss there. So let me jump out of this, and we'll jump over here to Montana State University's website. So I already have the search there set up email on my phone. So that's what I'm searching. This is their home page, right? I'm just going to navigate their website and find this answer. And I get this search result. And there's a lot of different search results. There's, Office 365 Exchange email for faculty and staff, iOS, Windows on your phone or tablet, email setup, blah, 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 blah. And there's multiple hits on this. So here's where we run into our first problem. This is kind of what I was talking about, right? Even if this isn't even really a knowledge base, this is just web pages that are being indexed through search. And we can see there's already a lot of different conditions behind each one of these. And I'm honestly, especially if I'm a student or faculty, I may be unsure on which one to click in the first place. If I'm a student and I see like, oh, look, iOS, Windows on your phone or tablet, and I click this one, well, guess what? I just went to the wrong spot because it says in the link, faculty and staff, but I'm actually a student, and I was just picking up on the device type that they had in the description. So I find out shortly through reading this, maybe I don't even see this faculty and staff up here again. This happens very often, especially on static web pages with all of this information stacked in here and a bunch of links, and it's going all over the place. I might miss that. So I try to go through the process, find out it doesn't actually work for me. Now I'm calling that IT help desk and I'm saying, hey, I tried to follow the article, but I got it wrong. Well, that was for faculty and staff, blah, 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 a bunch of time wasted for something that never really even needed IT at all. So this is just a really good example of how this works. And hey, let's just make it even more interesting. Let's jump into what it would look like on a phone. So here we go. Now we have a phone and we have all this text and we got to scroll down through all of this information and we're losing users. They're definitely skipping information on that mobile device and missing those key elements because there's so much there, and we scan when we are on the internet. So we're not critically reading much. And that being said, let's jump over to the chatbot demo that we built to actually solve this problem. So here we have the TARS chatbot, and this one was specifically built to just handle setting up an email and setting up a printer, but we're not going to go through that today. Or you could ask a question. So this jumps over to some NLP. You could ask, hey, I want to set up email on my phone. We could actually do that. We could run through this twice and take a look at it. So there's a a definite discussion between button driven or guided versus NLP open query questions, and which one is better, when to use, what strategy to use. For a lot of this, buttons are supreme. They're just so much easier to guide users quickly. They want a fast, effective solution. They want to move quickly through it. If you give them open text, they very well could type a query that makes no sense to the chatbot. They could tell you their life story and then add the question at the end. And it's very possible that the NLP would have a hard time understanding that. But with buttons, it's truly a consistent experience. So let's just talk about this really quick, right? So I clicked set up my email, and the chatbot determines what device I'm on immediately. And it actually says, okay, I see you're on desktop. Would you like to go through the desktop email setup? This is very critical when comparing to those static web pages, right? Those static articles, or in there too. And not to knock MSU at all. This is very common across the board, public sector and beyond, that we have a lot of static text and PDFs to explain these processes. And they're just really not a good experience for users. So in that search, right, it had a bunch of different types of devices you could be on, and then you had to click on which device, and it would probably take you to either a PDF or another static web page, where you'd start going through the list there, and you might have made some mistakes along the way and have some issues. The chatbot can actually start identifying those conditions up front and then verifying with the user. Or better yet, and I can show this in the NLP, you could type out, I'm looking to set up email on my phone, and you did it from your mobile device. Well, it's almost guaranteed that they're going to be setting up their email on the mobile device that they're typing their query. So you can actually jump steps to understand if they're on Apple device, Android device, take them right through that flow based on their device type and solve that problem. So not only are you deflecting those tickets, but you're giving the user a much better experience on the front end, which is key to deflecting those tickets. If they don't feel like they're actually being served and assisted, then they're going to drop off, and then they're going to call that phone number, and we're back where we started. So this is something it can't detect. That's nothing to do with the chatbot, just how it works. So I have to ask about the OS, and then we can move through. So the chatbot will literally take me step by step through this process. It could also share screenshots. It could also embed a YouTube video or another video that shows it through that actual action. And it is much simpler to take a user step by step through a process, and while doing so, you can ask them specific questions as they pertain, right? So as you're going through an email setup, if there's some condition that is specific to that user, like, are you a student or faculty, as you're going through the process, and they go, well, I'm a student, well, then you need to do this, right? Instead of saying, if you're a student, do this, if you're faculty, do that. That doesn't help the people. They're going to miss it. But if they're asked that question, they select it, then it identifies the condition and then takes them to the correct messaging, the correct outcome based on those factors. So what I'll do, and this just steps us through the process. So there's no real sense in doing that for this webinar, for the demo. But what I'll do is I'll actually come over here and I'll make our experience an iPhone. And as you can see, versus the web page, this is already a much better experience on the mobile device. Very clear, very easy to see, understand what is going on, and it's very easy to interact with. That touch ability with buttons especially complements the mobile device in this chatbot interface. So I'm going to hit set up my email. Oh, maybe I should have reloaded this before doing that. So maybe now it'll pick it up as an iPhone. I think that was the problem. I inspected the page after I started it, so it pulled my device's desktop. Let's try that one more time. See, there we go. So I see that you're using an iPhone device. Would you like to go through the iPhone email setup? And we could say yes or no, I'm setting up a different device depending on how it goes. We're gonna go say yes. There's two ways we can go about setting this up. You can either use the default email app or the Outlook app. Right, so now there's two conditions and we're actually allowing the user to drive to what they want to accomplish. And the beauty of this too is if I say I want to try the Outlook app, which I can, but we're going to stop here and move to the next phase of this demo, it will give me the link to the app in the iTunes store, the Apple store, I should say, to download that. Because we're on an Apple device, we know this, right? So that whole experience is much faster for the user. They're not trying to determine their device in the static text. It's doing it all for them. So we've reduced the time that user needs to solve their query, and that's going to ensure that these tickets are not generated. It's going to deflect them off of that IT support. So very cool. That's how that works. I'm going to jump out of this one. We're going to take a look at the back end just very briefly, and then talk about how we could then automate that ticketing intake process. So here I have a chatbot, and this is the builder. So you'll see it's a very easy to use, intuitive, drag and drop visual builder. There's no code involved. And creating these chatbots is incredibly simple. Anybody can do it. You don't need to be a programmer coder. You can be just an average person, and it's very simple to create these chatbots. The beauty of them is what they are doing is actually just recreating your process and doing it in a way that's like a flow chart. It's very easy to track. It's very consistent because it's built on your identical process. And then there's just a conversational layer added to the front end. So instead of that static text, you're actually just sending short snippets of messages to the user to guide them through the process. So it's very easy to build these. You can actually have a chatbot up and running with some of your top processes in an hour or less. So it's incredibly easy to do. So what I'm going to do is show the front end of this, go through ticketing this through this chatbot really quick, and then show how we could actually connect this to a live chat in the builder very simply. So I'm going to pop over here. We're going to have one more quick demo on the front end with this chatbot, and then we will do a little bit more on the back end. So, oh, sorry. 1 minute here. Wrong link. There we go. So I'm actually, this is kind of cool. I can start the chatbot wherever I want. So I'm starting this one from the intake process. So welcome, I see you want to submit a request. I can help with that, ready to start, okay? Let's get started. We opt in as the user. And here it's just collecting my information, right? Very simple. There's no reason that the IT professional should be doing any of this stuff. The user has to give that information. Let's do it through chat. Let's do it automated. And what topic best matches your specific question. So this is something that is kind of built for TARS, not IT obviously, but the same concept, right? What is those issues, the topic that it revolves around, and what are you submitting for? There's actually something really cool happening here that I want to talk about just a little bit, but we'll go with a marketing collaboration. Hey, I want to collaborate with TARS. Short description of your query. So simple query. And then it asks for my email. This is all really important. So what's happening here is not only are we getting this information for the ticketing system, we're actually setting up so we can send that user a confirmation of their ticket, right? So it's even more complex than just, oh, we generated a ticket for that IT professional. We're communicating with the user through email, that's auto-generated. And what you saw actually at the beginning, because I didn't have the full link in, is what they can actually click on a magic link and drop into the chatbot and check the status of their submission, learn more about what's going on, a fully transparent process to solving their issues through chatbots. So it actually gives the user another layer to this experience where they can actually feel like they're not just being ignored, right? That they can check the status and see that, oh, in fact, it has been reviewed, and they're just taking their time, or they're waiting to respond to me. So that's very important. And it allows you to check your information, and if I would like to change my name or email, I can, and then go back to submitting. So I'm going to submit this. So far, this has been a very simple, easy to just straightforward, and that's it. It's over. We've completed this intake. Very easy process, very simple from the front end, but we don't know what's actually happened on the back end. And my phone just buzzed because I just got a notification that somebody filled this out. And not only that, as the user, because I entered my own email, I also got another email that gave me the details of my submission. So here's your reference number. Here's a magic link to click to see the update at any time. The other thing that happened is all of this information was transferred to a database to store, and it could then be ticketed to Zendesk. So all of that information could have just went into Zendesk. There's actually some hidden fields and information happening, like priority levels of the priority levels that are selected by topic, right? So we can identify the priority level, set that in Zendesk, do quite a few different things just through this simple interaction. So this user has a very simple interaction, but a bunch of stuff happened on the back end. So we'll take a quick look at that in the builder side and see what's really going on here. So this I've actually made very simple. What I've done is I've connected it to a service like Zapier, where I can then take the data that's been submitted and push it to whatever application I want. Zendesk, and actually it's a very nice interface to use to set up this ticketing. So you can have very granular understanding of the ticket coming in, or you can actually use our API feature and do it yourself. So you can trigger these at any time, send it to Zendesk exactly how you want it, different flows for different priorities and needs, and depending on who it's going to go to, can all be set up. But additionally, what's happening here is I'm using this service to do a single API call to that service that's automating multiple things. So that this one service that I'm using is actually Integrately. They're kind of new to the scene, and I thought they had a really interesting product. So I actually left Zapier. This was set up on Zapier before, went to them. And what I was able to do is when you select this topic list, there's numbers. So it's very straight up. You didn't see it on the front end, but on the back end, there's option value, as we call it. So I have a number assigned to each one of these. And you can do numbers, you can do tags. It doesn't really matter what it is. And when the person selects it, what I've actually done on the Integrately side is, depending on the number selected, we'll send the email of the interaction to the correct person on the TAR side to answer that question. So if it's marketing, it's going to go to Arnav, and he's going to get that email, and it's going to tell him that Levi is interested in a marketing collaboration to do a webinar about scaling government. And he's going to get that automatically. So he can then respond to me instantaneously, essentially through email, and start that conversation, versus sales would be going to our CEO, Ish, who would then be able to interact with that person. Now, the same concept applies to IT desk or customer support, any of those places where you're intaking issues with the user or any of that, things of that nature. You can actually set this up to be a really smart email notification system. It's going all to the right people. It's identifying the needs of the user up front. It's ticketing this whole thing. and the ticketing is actually happening over here. So when you hit submit, it generates a ticket on this reference side. So this assigns a ticket to it, and then this all goes out and gets submitted into the database, generate a ticket through, add that ticket and generate all the details through Zendesk, send out the email to the person who would respond to it. So they, if they have their Zendesk account open, for example, they would see that ticket come in, they would get a notification that this is for them to answer, and they could jump right on it to answer it. Additionally, if we wanted to transfer that user over to live chat, because I think this is important, right? We've already collected all their information. Why not hit the user right where they're at, right as they're interacting with that chatbot, and have a conversation with them? We could solve their query in sub 5 minutes. Forget about that 30-minute ticket, average ticket time. Let's bring it down to 5 minutes. We need human intervention, but we could do it right then and there. So it's really simple. We actually have a direct live chat integration with Zendesk. So I'm going to come over here. This is, we call these gambits. And in there is where you're going to do your messaging, your user input, but you can also select some integrations that are triggered at the moment that you hand that user over. So we've determined that we can actually live chat with these folks. We could even have another step in here that determines if we're in business hours or out of them. So if we're out of business hours, I wouldn't even offer the live chat handover, right? I would just let that ticket submit. Maybe that personnel can answer via email, depending on who they are at any time, versus sleep, obviously, or they could be in the queue to be responded to in the morning. But if we're going to add Zendesk, it's actually quite simple. Your Zendesk chat account key goes here. You can add some information that immediately displays to the user on the Zendesk chat board that's doing this chat and ticketing process, but it's not necessary, right? They've already been actually notified via their email that this is happening. They just have to jump in and start chatting with that user. They'll have a full context, the tickets generated, they'll know exactly what's going on, and they'll be able to fix that user's issue right then and there. But this is an option for folks that don't want to do in that, or maybe they just need a quick chat for something and don't want to get really complicated with generating that whole ticket. So this is a simple way to hand over to live chat. And all you actually really need is that Zendesk chat account key, and then you're good to go. So it's connected there. You could have your chat session and then end the conversation. So that is pretty much it for this demo. Yeah, there's not much more to talk about. There's a lot more that could be done with this, right? This is all based on your process, how you actually intake users, how they set up their email, how they do printers, whatever it may be in the IT world or the customer support world. You can build those workflows through a self-help solution. And when it is beyond the ability of the chatbot or it needs human intervention, we can hand them off to a really sophisticated ticketing system that does a ton of automating on the back end. And when we're talking about that time and that money that we're showing in the opening slides, we're talking about saving tens of thousands of dollars every month with this system. This is hands down the best way to interact with users and actually do it in a way that is based on their conditions, based on their context. And if it goes beyond that, then we can automate that whole back-end experience. So I'm going to jump over here again and just show we're open for questions. So if you feel free to add any questions in the question and answer or in the chat, and we'll answer those. But additionally, here's our contact information. So feel free to reach out if you'd like to schedule a demo. We'd be happy to talk to you about it. Look more at your specific use case and generate, not only have that discussion, but even we could generate a chatbot for your organization to interact with and see how it works. which I think is really important, right? You need to see what that experience is from the user's perspective first, and then it will definitely open up the whole world of possibilities. So take a moment here to see if there's any questions, and if not, we will end this webinar. Thank you all for joining me today. It's been great. Feel free also, if you have questions, if you're watching this on a recording and you have questions, reach out through those emails, through that channel, those channels on the screen, and we'll be happy to chat with you.